This channel is only possible thanks to direct contributions from you, the viewers. Seriously, thank you guys. If you'd like to contribute, you can do so for as little as $1 a month on Patreon, or come pick up a t-shirt at the merch store. Links below. In a sense, Utena Tenjo is a tragic hero who fails to achieve her dream or realize that the myth of the prince, bride, and witch was a rotten foundation for dreaming in the first place. But still, she's triumphant because she succeeds in saving what truly matters. The title of the show clues us in. The nature of Utena's triumph is not that she's a prince, but that she's revolutionary. Through her efforts over the course of the tale, Utena collides with the characters around her, shattering their delusions, breaking their misconceptions and assumptions under her blade. Utena wrecks the status quo, devastating the ideas that drive her opponents to duel her in the first place. And in doing so, she forces them to reevaluate those ideas, to revolutionize them. Once Utena rejects Sotori and is banished from the campus, everyone she met quickly starts to forget she ever existed. But they can't forget the way she changed them and forced them all to grow. The way she revolutionized their worlds. And she revolutionized no one's world as much as she did Anthy's. As Utena slowly learns more about Anthy, the girl, she's also drawn deeper into the world of the duels, where she learns more about the nature of Anthy, the Rose Bride. Their ascent and growth into mutual understanding, pity, and finally true empathy and appreciation is intertwined with Utena's uncovering the secrets of the Rose and how they relate to the nature of her place in the world. Similarly, Steven's path to understanding Rose is opened through his connection to Connie. Connie's analytical mind, compassion for Steven's struggles, and affinity for the lion that guards many of Rose's secrets are all critical to furthering their understanding of the world around them and its history. As that understanding grows, so does their anger at themselves and how woefully ineffective they are to fulfill their desires to help make it better. Steven and Connie inherit the core struggles of Utena and Anthy, rendered in the softer tones of relatively happy childhoods. Like his mother, Steven has struggled with the superior-minded attitude of the prince, failing to empathize with others precisely when he's most invested in protecting them.
I just wanted to protect you.
Stop. Just tell me everything.
Like a gender-swapped Utena following a gender-swapped prince, he's also fixated on living up to a mythic, idealized standard of an all-knowing savior figure, and his inability to do so causes him considerable stress. Connie shares some parallels with Anthy as well. Mrs. Maheshwaran's overprotectiveness is a far cry from Akio's exploitative abuse, but Connie still grows up under the thumb of a domineering family, forced to assume an attitude of absolute compliance and passive submission for a lot of her early life. As a result, she also deals with an intense fear of people initially, mirroring Anthy's intense fear of the world and others. Steven and Connie eventually grow to confront these terror episodes together in the form of hyper-realistic visions of tension and anxiety that they learn to manage together. The controlling relationship dynamic at the root of her problems is mirrored in Steven's relationship with the Diamonds, though, particularly White Diamond, who explores the logical conclusion of that controlling approach to parenting. So domineering is White Diamond that, in the face of imperfection, she literally copies herself into the gems around her, fixing everything through an overwhelming vision of perfection. This is the image of Dios in Utena, the distilled desire for a singular person to know best and make the world better with their singular will. The rightful order on Otori is for the prince, a man, to successfully take charge of all of creation as its de facto god, save all the brides, and cast out all the flawed witches who can't seem to fit into society right. It is the desire for the singular righteous hero imagined in a fairy tale to be real. White Diamond is simply a version of that image who performs her endless brand of manipulative culture control in the name of infinitely engaging in an unsustainable exploitation of physical resources. The labor of her empire still requires putting her subjects into boxes. It's just that with Dios, the boxes are gender norms, instead of sci-fi takes on utilitarian function and identity. And what the two pairs of heroes have in common is that they overcome these recurring problems by relying on and honestly coming to understand each other. It's through her relationship with Steven that Connie gains the power to be honest with her family and begin asserting her identity. It's through Connie that Steven comes to reckon with how his tendency to self-sacrifice and assume he knows best is kind of condescending and terrible. And it's through each other that they gain the power to face reality at all, fusing to become Stevani. Early in Utena's final arc, Utena gets a similar power-up, when the sword she's been drawing from Anthy's chest abruptly disappears, and Anthy instead pulls an equally, if not more powerful sword from Utena's own chest. This is both an example of the increased mutual intimacy, trust, and understanding between the two girls, and a symbolic marker for the fact that Utena's power no longer stems from owning the Rose Bride, but instead from her own heart, and Anthy simply holds the power to draw it out. Steven ultimately doesn't rely heavily on power-ups to win his battles, though. He has already transcended that aspect of the prince. His iconic character beat, the source of his ability to triumph over White Diamond, is something Steven does throughout the show, but is something Utena only learns to use at the very end of her story, in her final triumph over Akio. Utena's victory is simply in her love of Anthy. It's one of the most triumphant moments of friendship, love, and radical empathy in fiction as Utena comes face to face with the full gravity of Anthy's suffering. Anthy the witch stabbed Utena the prince in the back with a single sword, all the while knowing the pain it would cause her 1,000,000 times over, the scale of the pain she constantly endures. Utena cannot fight this monster, Anthy's very terror of the outside world, with a blade. She can't fight it as a prince. She defeats it instead with her words, with an outstretched hand, by recalling a younger self whose desire to help wasn't yet tainted by her obsession with living out a fantasy, simply by bearing down to the raw truth of who she is. Utena Tenjo, a girl who would still try to help Anthy, even if she doesn't know how. Utena being willing to go to these lengths is ultimately what convinces Anthy that the outside world is worth the risk of being hurt again. And it's this spirit of compassion that motivates Steven through the entire show, even as he struggles to move beyond princely behavior. It lets him persuade Yellow and Blue to try and repair their broken family, and more than anything else, it gives him the connection with Connie that teaches him to fuse. When White Diamond splits his human and gem halves apart, it is that ability to reconnect that puts him back together. Oh, and of course, he couldn't have even managed it without Connie literally carrying his human half part way. This is especially touching because Utena being able to love Anthy is not the same as being able to love herself. With her final words before disappearing from Otori, Utena berates herself for failing to become a prince, mournfully apologizing to Anthy. The tragedy of Utena is that she is never able to love herself for the pained, lonely person she truly is, rather than the fantasy she's decided she must embody to be worthwhile. Revolutionary Girl Utena thus ends with a goodbye and a promise. As Utena disappears from the world of Otori, Anthy follows in her footsteps into the mysterious world beyond its walls, swearing to find her. As Anthy leaves behind both the brother that abused her and the story itself, we're left with an aged photo of the two, holding hands and reminded of their promise. Someday, together, they'll shine. Growing up, I always viewed the story of Adolescence of Utena, the movie, as much as a sequel as a retelling. Anthy and Utena meet again, but true to her word at the end of the show, this time Anthy's much more proactive and seems immediately interested in Utena. This time, they leave the school together. And the same can roughly be said about Steven Universe's relationship to the original Utena show. At least, that's the same feeling I get from the relationship between Steven and Connie. A sense that what I'm seeing is a bit of a retelling of Utena and Anthy's story, but move forward in the cycle of karma. This is also true of Rose and Pearl, to be honest. They're their own tragedy, but it's a little easy to imagine Anthy idolizing Utena at the end of the show, much the same way Pearl idolizes Pink, which is an imaginable obstacle in their relationship, since Utena was never really comfortable with the tone of obedience and deference that Anthy referred to her with. In Steven and Connie's story, though, they're able to spend time together, learn and grow from each other, and face challenges as a team. They exist in the far-off someday that Utena and Anthy promised each other, made manifest through an artist who was herself once inspired by their story. I'll grant that this is a strange and esoteric way to connect the two stories, implying there's some sort of karmic literary cycle going on here. But to be fair, it's something Ikuhara has done himself. In the show he made after Utena, Mawaru Penguin Drum, the two protagonists Shoma and Kamba are visually likened to Campanella and Giovanni, the two protagonists of Night on the Galactic Railroad. And Ikuhara also uses his version of a story about those characters to reunite them. Night on the Galactic Railroad sees the two characters being driven apart, and in Penguin Drum, both characters set off on a new journey together. And as it happens, Rebecca Sugar is already a known fan of the show. The point is that like Utena did for Anthy, and Anthy did for Utena, Steven and Connie revolutionized each other, and in the process of doing so, they shine. Steven and Connie's light extends out beyond them, challenging preconceived notions and limiting ideas wherever they go. They change the lives and hearts of the people around them constantly, revolutionizing Lars's concept of friendship, the gem's vision of humans, and so on, just as Utena's quest is implied to inspire her fellow duelists, and maybe eventually, the whole of Otori. And just as Anthy is the means through which Utena achieves true self-comprehension and acceptance in the movie, it's Connie that helps Steven reach out to and understand himself in their final conflict. While Utena ends the series berating herself for her failure as a prince, Steven ends his series affirming his own identity. He is able to do so because of the love of his family and friends, and of Connie. And Anthy free of her coffin and able to act in this story freely for herself. The true beauty of Steven Universe is not, like in Utena, about a hero's willingness to love a friend and fellow victim to the point of self-destruction. It is instead in his willingness to choose to love and accept himself as he really is, thus enabling others to do the same for themselves. And now, having succeeded, Steven and Connie are free to live their lives in this world, knowing that whatever storms come in the future, they'll be able to deal with together. I'm excited to see what future seasons of Steven Universe hold in store, now that the show has so fully commented and evolved on the story of Utena, crafting a complete thematic journey in its own right. I hope taking this exploratory journey with me revolutionized your world a little, and if you're a fan of either Steven Universe or Utena, I hope this encouraged you to check out the other. One last time, let me suggest that if you enjoyed this video series, you might enjoy checking out my friend Sam Keeper's writing on her blog, Storming the Ivory Tower. I couldn't have finished this series to my satisfaction without her, and I really appreciate her help. And her writing is typically focused on media and art analysis, so if you like what I'm doing, there's more where that came from. If you've been enjoying the background tracks, I would suggest checking out the Revolutionary Girl Utena soundtrack and the Steven Universe fan album Songs from Planet Earth, which was kind enough to provide me use of their instrumentals for this video series. Let me know down in the comments if you check either of them out, it'll really make my day. Until the next time we meet, remember our absolute destiny, Apocalypse, and keep rising. Huge thanks go out to my patrons for making this video possible. If you want to help support the channel and come join us at our awesome and growing Discord community, feel free to join us for as little as $1 a month. You can also find me on the r/Hiveswap Reddit and Discord. That's all for now, so thank you again, and as always, keep rising.